Before there was 2K and their unmatched capacity to sling microtransactions. Before we were constantly missing layups under the rim with superstar big men. There was an NBA video game so superior that 6th grade me thought he'd never seen anything better. I'm kidding, man, these games were ass compared to the competition. That's probably why they're not around anymore. Just like your phone won't be if you're walking around without a case on it. Most of you have cases on your phone anyway, so they might as well look good, right? Athletic Cases has a ton of options with different player art from different sports, so if you want to try and save your phone from inevitably cracking in style, be sure to visit athleticcases.com with the link in the comment section and in the description. NBA The Life Series. Have you ever heard of these? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. That's because the last one released in the year 2008, yes, like a fucking eternity ago. But at one point in our lives, not only did we have live and 2K basketball games, but we also had this mysterious series that very few people ever bring up. However, don't go thinking that this is just some long lost line of games that you missed out on or you were just oblivious to, because they actually only made 4 titles starting with NBA 06 and ending with NBA 09. But the one I'm going to be talking about briefly today, because it's the only one I ever owned, is NBA 07. And before we get to that, I did want to point this one thing out. You know how My Career has been 2K's most popular mode pretty much since the year it dropped? Well, it turns out they were not the first to do it. As a matter of fact, they weren't even the first to do these long drawn out cinematic story modes. No. NBA The Life was doing this way back with NBA 06, and that's actually all I'm gonna say about it because I didn't play the game, so I can't fairly judge them. However, I can tell you about NBA 07, which is actually the first game that I ever owned on the PlayStation 3, and technically it was one of my first basketball games as well. So let me take you back to the year 2006 so I can put into perspective what this game meant to me and probably a few others. Okay, so the year is 2006 and the PlayStation 3 just dropped in November. I'm stuck with graphics like this or this because I don't have the Xbox 360. And the internet is not a huge thing yet, so I'm not constantly having these insane HD graphics blasted in my face to know what I'm actually missing out on. Then, sometime in between the day that the PS3 dropped and Christmas, I walk into GameStop to see this nice demo station with an LCD screen displaying NBA 07 at full HD 1080p. My mind is fucking blown. I've never seen any game look this beautiful. I get a PlayStation 3 with this game on Christmas and my life is complete. That is until I meet my soon-to-be best friend at a bus stop. He formally introduces me to 2K and I am forever pulled into the dark side. Anyways, before that, NBA 07 was life, no pun intended. And as you might expect for the year 2007, there really wasn't a whole lot to this game. For whatever reason, this one didn't have that whole My Career type thing going, which probably would have just blown me away back then. But it did have a cool feature called NBA Replay, which was super dope for a game 13 years ago. It was separated into Games of the Week and the Season. Games of the Week used the internet to download the best performances that happened in the previous week in the real NBA, and you were able to replicate those performances and scenarios in the game. The Season took all the best performances from 2006 and allowed you to replicate those in game. Basically like a really light version of the Michael Jordan mode in NBA 2K11. Unfortunately, that was just about the coolest thing this game had to offer in terms of extras. The only other exciting thing was either playing online, which was my first experience with a basketball game online, or their mini games. They had a pretty dope skills challenge that would actually still be fun today, and then they had Own the Court. On this mode, basically you just had to score from different spots on the floor and then you try to own more spots than your opponent before time runs out. Me and my cousin spent hours on this mode, and low-key, I actually got stuck playing it multiple times for this vid because it was a ton of fun. But by far the biggest selling point of this game was just how beautiful it was for its time. I'm not 100% sure how accurate this is, but the IGN review stated that Sony touted this as their first full HD 1080p game, which back then was a huge deal considering the PS2 only ran a handful of games on just 1080i. For a while, I was running it on my small box TV, so I wasn't really getting the full experience, even though it was clearly better than anything I owned before. But man, when I first hooked the widescreen up in my room with the RGB cables, good lord, I could not deal with life. Even this many years later, look, of course the animations look terrible and dated, and yeah, it's aged pretty poorly, but the overall look of this game is still pretty in terms of lighting and such, so you get the general idea of what this felt like 13 years ago. But as far as what the gameplay was like, yeah, that would be my guess as to why it didn't survive competing with 2K or Live. To its dying day, it truly felt like the most arcadey basketball game out of the three. I mean, just look at the way your player would get hot. Basically, you had to score consistently and fill up these bars on top of a scoreboard, and if you were able to fill those up, now you were in something similar to takeover mode. Whenever you shot the ball, there was a rebound icon flashing on the floor, which is actually really funny because of what it did to the end of games. I don't know if I'll be able to find an example, but if you shot a potential game-winning or game-tying shot, the camera would zoom in on the ball and everything would go into slow motion. But as the ball got closer to the rim, you could literally see if there was a rebound marker on the floor already or not, so it kind of really killed all the suspense once you got close enough. Like I said, it was straight up arcade. On the bright side, however, the shot meter was awesome. You'd shoot and a meter would kind of wrap around the basketball, and it was really the most satisfying thing in the world to get a green release. I'd actually still use this if 2K had it. But the gameplay itself was hilarious, I'm not gonna lie. Literally everyone is doing the same moves. It was just a matter of how fast they did them. So you could go from the top of the key with your big man and do a crossover into the lane sometimes. I mean, kudos for predicting what basketball would eventually become, but Tim Duncan is not Allen Iverson. That's where this game really lost points when my cousin would bring down NBA 2K7. That's where you started to notice things like how there were no commentators, no halftime shows. Yeah, 2K was just superior even back then in every conceivable way except for the pretty graphics. It was just so awkward to have the arena announcer basically recapping everything that happened.
LeBron James with a two-point shot.
So yeah, that's NBA 07, and this was a one and done thing for me. Before this, I had only owned NBA Live 05 and NBA 2K5 because my brother had it and I used to play it, so of course when I got NBA 07 it was more than adequate. But once I moved on to 2K, there was just no way I was going to deal with a game that looked and played like this. I've seen some positive things about the last release, which was NBA 09, but I never got to play it myself past downloading the demo. Again, by that point 2K had really moved into another dimension and there was just no chance of this ever overtaking it. However, clearly they were onto something with the my career aspect. Just like I said in one of my 2K reviews, they've never necessarily been the first to do a lot of things as much as they've just been able to package them the best. So yeah, that's a little bit about NBA The Life series and NBA 07 specifically, which was my video game life before 2K. Definitely not a great game, but just like Air Bud and Rebound, f what you think. NBA 07 is always gonna have a special place in my heart.